Meditating today on Psalm 24. Yesterday, we saw the gospel in Psalm 24, and it's right here. It's right before us how God provides righteousness to those who do not have pure hearts, so they can approach Him and ascend to His hill and be received by Him and accepted by Him. And this is a responsive song. So the song leader would have sung, "Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in His holy place?" And the people would have responded, "He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive the blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation." So we saw yesterday the brokenness, the sinfulness of mankind. We saw the process of approaching God as one of righteousness, that I have to have righteousness. But we also saw the directionality of that righteousness, is that the righteousness in this psalm is coming from God through salvation. So I don't bring my righteousness to God, I receive His righteousness by way of salvation. And we know that in the 21st century to be provided by Jesus. Jesus climbed the hill. Jesus went to the cross. Jesus laid down His life as the ultimate and final Lamb of God, so that I could receive the blessing of verse 5 from the Lord, and so that I could be declared righteousness from the God of His salvation, so I could be declared saved. Well, look at verse 6, Psalm 24 and verse 6. Continuing on this thought, this part of the psalm, and it kind of has two parts. The first part concludes with this: "This is the generation of them that seek Him, O that seek Thy face, O Jacob, Selah." Now, a couple things about this verse historically and contextually, all right? Let's talk about the word Jacob. Jacob was who Israel was named after. The nation of Israel is named after Jacob. So there's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob in the lineage. Abraham followed God. He gave birth to Isaac, the promised child. Isaac gave birth to Jacob and Esau. Jacob became the father of the nation of Israel. And his name was changed to Israel. So often in Scripture, you'll see the words Jacob and Israel interposed. And sometimes it's talking about the person Jacob, and sometimes it's talking about the nation of Jacob. Okay? Well, obviously in this psalm, David is the king of the nation of Israel. So he's king of Jacob, and he is crying out to them as the descendants of Jacob and the people of God to be a generation that seeks God. So it's a cry to Jacob. It's a cry to Israel, the people of Israel. Okay? So let's talk about the word Selah. It means to rest or to pause, or maybe a key change in the song, but probably a pause in the music and in the thought flow. So it gives pause to let sink in, or to meditate or consider what was just sung. All right, what was just talked about. Verse 6, earlier in the verse, "This is the generation of them that seek Him, that seek Thy face." Now let me zero in on what I really love about this verse, especially in light of what we've read. Verse 1 talks about the supremacy, the global, the universal supremacy of God. Verses 1 and 2, that God owns it all. Verse 3 establishes a question: who can approach or be received by God? Who can be accepted by God? Verse 4 says only someone that's perfect. Pure, clean hands, pure heart, pure soul, and complete honesty. Well, that's nobody but Jesus. Well, that person, whoever has that kind of righteousness, will receive blessing, receiving affirmation. They will live in the favor of God, and righteousness that will flow from God, the God of His salvation. So by way of salvation, we receive God's righteousness. Now, David is probably, again, writing this psalm as the tabernacle is being established behind his home up on the Temple Mount, up on the hill behind the palace of the city of David. And the Ark of the Covenant is probably being brought into town, into the city of David for the very first time. And so David is leading his nation to love God. He's leading this generation to seek after God, to long for Him, to worship Him, to seek His face, to seek His ways, to want His will. And so this is what I love about verse 6. David is writing a song that others will sing responsively. And this would have been the cry of his heart as a leader, as a father, as a shepherdly king, as an influencer. I want this generation under my influence to seek the Lord, to love the Lord, to follow the Lord. So as a dad and a king, as the father of a nation in this moment, he is leading well, he's influencing well, but he's teaching them to say this to themselves. He's teaching them to sing this, to resolve this, okay? He's teaching them to embed their hearts and their hopes in this. So he's not just leading them in this direction, he's teaching them to preach this message to themselves and to resolve this in their own being. This is the generation. So think of this. This is the king saying, this is the generation. We will be this, okay? But it's also the people singing this. This is, I am this generation. I am this. I'm going to seek after God. I'm going to seek his face, and I'm going to seek him with my people. We're going to seek him together. On Sunday, we had the privilege to dedicate 12 new babies or young children to the Lord. And I jokingly said to the church, we haven't had a baby dedication since before COVID started. So some of the kids that we're dedicating are like 15 years old. We all had a good laugh about that. But we dedicated a new group of kids to the Lord. And what was this dedication? It was the parents saying, God, thank you for this child. We want to dedicate this child to you, and we want to dedicate ourselves, commit ourselves to raising this child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. But we did it publicly with the whole church body. Why? Because I said to the church, this is the church family equally saying, we will be your church. We will be your family. We are your people, and we will follow God together, and we will provide the backdrop of faith that substantiates your testimony to your children. We will live lives of faith. We will be a church family in which these children are growing up that shows them Jesus and shows them real faith in real lives. We will show them Jesus on display so that they will covenant to follow the Lord. And I love that. We were collectively saying, let's go all in for Jesus to raise these children and to help these parents raise their children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And that's what's happening here. This is the generation of them that seek him. It's kind of a battle cry, a rallying cry. It's almost a pep rally that seek thy face, O Jacob, Selah. So my friend, today, a couple of applications. The first is, can you say, I don't know about everybody else, but for me in this generation, I'm going to seek God. I'm going to seek his face. And as long as I'm living, you're going to find me seeking the Lord. You're going to find me following Jesus. But can you go a little further than that today? Can you think about who you influence? Can you think about becoming a person who can rise up and say to someone else, we will follow the Lord. Let's follow the Lord together. You follow with me. Can you say that to your spouse? Can you say that to your children? We follow the Lord. Can you say that to a group or a home study or a discipleship group or someone that you're leading? Can you be a disciple maker? Would you stand up and wrap your arms around somebody and lock arms with your church family or grab the hand of a new believer? And would you say, let's follow Jesus together? You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything. You have to know that you're following Jesus, and you invite somebody to do the same with you. When I got my cancer diagnosis some years ago, we decided that I would tell my children the very night that I heard about this from the doctor. I wanted them to know. Number one, I didn't want to hold this from them. Number two, I figured they'd be able to see it in my face that there was a burden. Number three, I didn't want them to worry and fear. And number four, I wanted them to immediately begin praying. But more than any of that, I wanted us as a family to set ourselves like we will go through this way. And I remember that we shared the news, we cried together, we group hugged together, and then we made a decision. And I said to them, now right now, guys, we're going to make a decision as a family. We've been given a sacred trust. A trial is a stewardship. And I said, we've been given a sacred trust, and we're going to honor the Lord with the trial he's given us. And so I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a covenant, a family covenant. We're going to love God, trust God, live for God for the rest of our lives, no matter what. 5 parts to the statement. We're going to love God, trust God, live for God for the rest of our lives, no matter what. I looked at my crying children in that moment, thinking I was going to die soon, and I said, there's something worse than me dying early of cancer, and that would be you getting angry at God because he took me to heaven before he took you to heaven. So let's just make a decision right now that God has saved us and secures us and is giving us eternity in heaven together, so we don't need to get bitter at him because he's infinitely good. If he wants me to go to heaven before you, that's his business. My life is his, your life is his. So let's make a decision that no matter what, we're going to love God, trust God, live for God for the rest of our lives. And one at a time. Lance, can you make that decision? He said, yes, I can. Larry, can you make that decision? Yes, Dad, I can make that decision. Haley, can you make that decision? Yes, Dad, I can make that decision. And together we wept and we prayed, and each of us prayed, if I recall, and we covenanted to God. I'm going to love God, trust God, live for God, no matter what, for the rest of my life. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Can you put your name there? Can you put your family's name there? I hope so. We'll see you tomorrow.